One of the things we're trying to change is the use of the term accident. Yep. So this guy got in a car, been drinking and taking drugs all day, and he knew he was not fit to drive. That's not an accident.
For me, it was 4 of my kids, more than half my family. And for Bridget, it's half her family, it's her only daughter. They went for this innocent walk to buy ice cream. And then for a drunk and drugged driver to kill our kids on the road, it wasn't okay. It was something so hard to witness and to live. And it's something that we carry for the rest of our life. Every single day in our life, we wake up with that pain of missing our kids.
Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jessie Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jessie Green.
Hey everyone, it's Jessie Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's really lovely to have your company for another episode of the show. I've just recorded perhaps the toughest podcast I've ever had to record, but also one of the most inspirational podcasts I've had the privilege to be part of. My guest today is Bridget Sakr, and Bridget has endured what no parent should ever endure. Her daughter Veronique went out one night with her young cousins. Walking along the street, they were hit by a car that was speeding 80 kilometres over the speed limit. The driver was intoxicated, and 4 children died that night. And so today I should say, I spoke to Bridget about that event, how she's dealt with the grief, how she's found purpose moving forward with her life, and how she's found forgiveness in her heart for the driver of the car. What's really interesting around Bridget and her family, her husband Craig, her son Michael, is the strength of character, the courage, the depth of conviction, and how they've been able to honour Veronique's memory and the memory of her cousins in a way that brings light to others, that lightens the load for other people who might be experiencing difficulty or loss. This is a podcast that I really hope you enjoy, and as you'll hear throughout the episode, I certainly get a bit emotional, so forgive me for that. Here's Bridget. Hey Bridget, thanks so much for taking the time to come and join us here at Savvy Dentist. I'm really grateful to you for making the space for us.
Thank you for having me.
We've been talking off air before we started and talking about Veronique, your daughter, and her passing along with her 3 cousins through a terrible tragedy, 1st of February 2020. Most of us would remember the terrible news that we saw that night on the TV news, the radio news. It was everywhere. It was hard not to hear it, hard not to see it. But you lived it. And we were talking a little bit off air that sometimes when you see the news, hear the news, it's a news story. And as sad as it is, it's one step removed. It doesn't feel real. And you think it's someone else. Mm-hmm. But on this occasion, that someone else was you. And I wondered if you could just talk us through how that night unfolded.
Yeah. And you're right. I don't think these sort of things are invited into your life. They barge in. It was an evening where myself and my now husband and my cousins Danny and Layla, we were going to a mutual birthday party for our cousin's daughter's 21st, and I'd agreed, I'd made arrangements with Layla to have the kids stay there. We just thought it would make sense. And Veronique and Angelina were very close, and it was Mabel, which was another cousin that was with them that night. It was her birthday. So it made sense to have them all together. And anyway, cut a long story short, I dropped her off, and Michael was my son, who's now 18, was meant to be with him as well, but he had his first league soccer game that Sunday morning. So he said, Mum, is it okay if I stay home? I don't want a late night. And I never kind of left him home alone. He was 13 and a half, but I thought, it's a few hours. It's fine. I asked my girlfriend to check on him. She doesn't live too far.
Yeah.
Dropped Veronique off and left, and Danny said to me, we won't be far behind you. We get to the city and Danny rings me. I literally just got up the stairs to this venue in Crown Street in Sydney, and he said, look, I said, is everything okay? He said, look, Bridget, I've lost my children. And I thought, oh, okay. I thought maybe they'd run on the street, maybe. But they're mature kids. I just couldn't quite fathom what he meant. He said they're dead. And I don't know if I was standing or what happened from there, other than thinking, oh, my God, do I ask about Veronique? That's very selfish. If I did, he just told me his kids are dead. I don't even know if I was grasping what he was saying, but I said, look, what about Veronique? And he said, you need to come to Oatlands Golf Club. And I don't know how I got in the car and how my husband Craig drove there. I just recall praying and asking for God's mercy to get me to this place, and not wanting to hear anything that would mean that Veronique wasn't safe. But that wasn't exactly the way the night unfolded. I mean, there was ambulances, blue lights, police. It was a mayhem, and trying to get to my daughter was very difficult, and it was just very harrowing to be told that, Veronique didn't make it. 7 children were hit by a driver who was 29 years of age. He had a passenger with him. He was driving 130 kilometres in a 50k zone. He was heavily intoxicated on drugs and alcohol, and hit 7. 4 instantly killed, and 1 went into a coma for a couple of months, still suffers brain injury, and then there were two survivors, one being the sibling of Danny's 3 children. And then obviously the young boy who went into a coma, his sister was the other one that was able to get up and look for help that night.
Firstly, I'm just so terribly sorry for your loss. And it feels trite to say it as almost a throwaway line, but it's unfathomable.
It is unfathomable.
When you arrived at the scene and you saw the lights, no doubt the police tape, the things that you see, what did you think? What did you feel? Did you have any sense that Veronique was not okay, or?
Oh, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to know it. They said it's a crime scene, and the police didn't know how to handle, and they don't know how to handle the families of the victims. And I'm her mum. They get their notepad out and then your name and your date of birth, and it was like a place had been bombed, and the ambulances were all there, and you're trying to find your family, your bodies. You can't get that image out of your mind. No. You don't wish it upon anyone. It was, and then obviously having to make a call to get my friend to bring my son, and obviously call the children's father, who came, run me down, and it was making those calls, going, you need to come. My sister, my brother, seeing my son screaming, and it was, terrible.
There is just no good that I can think of in that situation. And obviously I know that, you go through grief, and this is all in February 2020, and, not long after that, there's lockdowns, there's COVID, there's, you've got business to run, you've got all those other things, and then, life's thrown you the biggest curveball of all, the loss of a child.
I mean, try and bury a child. Try and bury 4 children 10 days later, 10 days later, and then Veronique on the 11th day. Literally within, I think, 50 days, the world shut down. People were no longer allowed to leave their homes. So you couldn't have any human interaction.
Yeah, how do you grieve in that circumstance? How do you when you go through such a terrible loss, I imagine the source of strength and comfort is from having other loved ones around you. And if you're then not able to have that, That must be an incredibly isolating, lonely experience.
Yeah, you're right. The consoling, and when you feel consoled, comes from your family, your friends, your community. The community support that we had was incredible. You know, I mean, I was a single mother working for so many years, trying to, raise 2 children. And then, when you're a working parent, you don't really have a lot of time to take off and spend with your children. It was always very limited. And so to be forced into a home with your children, which you think would be a blessing, I didn't have my daughter. The dinner table was not the same. The silence was deafening because she was kind of the active one that had, she was a bit more, lively and vibrant compared to her brother around the house.
Yeah.
I had to draw on my faith. I had to draw on my relationship that I had with God. I had to really think about the fact that there was suffering is part of life. I had to really know that Veronique is still with me. She's still alive. She's just not physically present. I had to rebirth that physical into spiritual. I had to really, that's what I had to do. I mean, to know that this is not the end and that she's still with me and that I will see her again. That's the only thing and still the only thing that it keeps me sane, but that's drawn from the fact that I was raised as a Catholic and raised to know that there is life after death and raised to know that suffering's part of life. I was raised to know that. And I think we live in a society today where anytime there is the word suffer, we kind of hit that stop button and say, I don't want to feel that or see that. But I was raised to know that that's part of life. I had to draw on all that. I had to draw on coming from a banking industry. I had to draw on the bank of faith to pay the dividends. I desperately needed that for my son, for me, for my husband and our business we were in the finance industry and my background's banking and insurance. So we set up a business and during COVID, cash became king. And, we were told that our funder who was funding us to, we create products for young professionals and self-managed super funds and to actually lend those products out to brokers. Our funder said, look, cash is king, COVID's hit, we don't know if there's going to be any funding. So we had to work out how we're going to keep our business afloat. We just started. I'd been in the corporate world for 23 years as an executive, and I made a big decision to leave that world to have more balance and time with my children, and made that decision, started that process, only to know that I'd lost my daughter and about to lose my business. Yeah, I mean, my mental health was really, I lost a lot of weight. I would get out of bed to show my son that he was worth living for, but it was very hard.
Yeah. Probably before I get into questions, I wonder if you can tell us a bit about Veronique.
Yeah, look, Veronique was 11 when she left this world and entered eternal life. She was vibrant, funny, she was witty, she was stubborn, and she was, I'm very anal and OCD. She was exactly the opposite. So I would always be going, Veronique, you've left everything behind. She loved people. She loved animals. She loved food. She was a foodie. She loved cooking. And she didn't have an attachment to material things. So she would get a gift for her birthday gifts and she just wouldn't open them,
Yeah, okay.
Not interested. And when we went to America, which was literally 10 days, but we landed back in Australia 10 days before she was killed. She'd gone and bought gifts with her own savings for her school friends and her cousins and wrapped them up ready to give to them.
Yeah, wow.
She didn't get to give it to them. I ended up giving it to them on her behalf. But that's the kind of person she was, She was very mature. She could see between the lines, she could read between the lines. And, I raised my children too. If we're in the car, we'd always say a prayer for the needy or the homeless. We went to church, went to a Catholic school, raised with faith. So
yep.
Sorry was part of something I was very big on. If you make a mistake, you say sorry. She could feed an army. She was that good with creating and making food at such a young age.
She sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And then to be in lockdown with Michael and Craig, was Craig in the house at the time as well?
He was still both. He was, because he had his, his kids as well. They're now 20, 23. He was commuting between both. But eventually, he stayed with me and Michael during COVID. And I think, he's been a rock and he's been able to, provide a lot of support to me and Michael.
Yeah.
Michael struggled. He certainly still struggles.
I want to ask about Michael in a second because he thankfully stayed at home that night.
Thankfully stayed at home that night,
right?
It wasn't his time. I do believe.
How does he cope with that though? Does that ever?
He has survivor's guilt. He does. He always says, "Mum, if I was with those kids, I would have heard the car." Now I don't know. He would have, because they were hit from behind.
You can't go there.
But he thinks that Veronique is always so consumed in the moment that she would have been oblivious. But I just, the children stopped literally, I think, a minute before that for 20 or 30 seconds to let a car go into a driveway. Now, they were walking on a footpath, so if they hadn't stopped, they kept walking, he would have missed them. But, thankfully he was home. Thankfully I allowed him to stay home.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the driver. As you said, he was speeding, well over the limit, 130 in a 50 zone, and he was under the influence. How do you forgive? How do you get past that? And how do you? I'm sure the reason I'm asking that is I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who may not have gone through what you've gone through, but still need to find it in their heart to forgive someone. And in preparation for today, I watched some news stories and read the articles, and in those articles, you said you'd found a place for forgiveness.
Yeah.
How did you get to that?
Through a lot of prayer, fasting, speaking to God a lot, understanding that Christ, through his darkest moments, forgave, understanding that God, there's nothing greater than God's mercy, and I'm speaking from my background being a Christian. So, the driver Samuel, between him and God, he could be asking for God's mercy, and I thought to myself, well, for me to let go of any chains, because I've never felt that. I've never been angry. I'm not an angry person. I always, right from the outset, I got to the conclusion that this was my daughter's time on earth. Getting to that point helped me not to be angry. But I started questioning, is that enough? And in order to get rid of the chains around my neck and live my life the best I can under these very difficult circumstances, was to actually go into that inner self and forgive Samuel. Doesn't mean that there's no consequences, doesn't mean that there's no justice, but I needed to do that to be a better mother, a better wife, a better daughter, a better everything, better for me mentally. If I kept getting stuck about what if, how, when, he deserves to suffer. I never, to me, it's between him and God. He has to live with himself. He has to live with that action. We all make choices in life. He chose to get in that vehicle intoxicated and on drugs. He made those choices, and he has to live with that choice he made and the consequences that he's now, having to go through, and that's the sentence. So I found it. I found that forgiveness in my heart. I decided to get to know his parents. They lost a daughter as well through cystic fibrosis. It was important for me to understand them and their pain, and maybe understand why their son went down this path. I mean, he was 29. He wasn't in his early teens, but just to get to know them, and I invited them to the cafe. And
how was that process? It
was, at first it was a bit, look, I gave them a hug. I gave his mum a hug even when I met her in court at the first sentencing. She didn't know how to react to that. But I always look at Our Lady, Mother Mary, the Mother of God and Jesus, and I think, well, a mother's heart is always that wound that she's suffering. She's got a living loss, being her son in jail, and she's got a real loss, being her daughter. So I try to connect with her pain from day one. And, it was at first a bit awkward, but it got better. And, I've made an effort to continue to call her and speak to her husband, Alan. And, we came to the cafe to put a photo up of the daughter on the wall. And we've talked about catching up again. Samuel, she said he'd like to ring me or write me a letter, and he's written me a letter, which I am going to respond to. It's a very heartfelt letter. He's very remorse and he's very sorry, and he's built a relationship with God, and he's converted to become a Christian. Now, people could say he's just doing that to get his parole. I hear that all the time from people, but no, I sincerely feel that we have taken a path of forgiveness, and you need to remind yourself every day, am I forgiving him because I don't know him? So it's easier to forgive. I mean, sometimes when your family and friends hurt you, it's hard to forgive, but he's made a choice to take a path of looking at what forgiveness can actually do to someone, and from his perspective. And I think in the end he may come out of prison and maybe be an ambassador of what not to do when you make the wrong choices. I really feel that will happen one day.
I hope so. I hope that would be that would be a productive thing. I wanted to, and I know you probably can't speculate on this, but Samuel, how do you forgive yourself? Because forgiving other people is one thing, forgiving yourself is a different thing, and we've probably all got things we need to forgive ourselves for as well.
Yeah.
How does one extend forgiveness to oneself?
I don't know. Look, I actually think he may not have yet forgiven himself, and he's doing everything he can to try and get through every day. I mean, when you have time to be sitting in a cell or a routine of life that is isolating, I'm sure you have those I'm sure there's more down moments than up moments when you go towards the thought of the reality of what you did and why you did it and how you did it. I don't know if it's really, I don't even know if forgiveness is something that is even possible for him. I can't speak for him. No. But I certainly think he's trying to look at his soul and nurture that soul the best way he can. I believe he's praying a lot. That's a way of helping him. And I know for me, if it wasn't for my prayer life now, which is a big part of my life, other people might go to yoga, or they might do Pilates, or they may meditate. And for me, that's my prayer life, and that helps me do other things, continue to do other things in life.
I wanted to talk about that because as terrible a tragedy as the loss of a child is, and the loss of 4 children, of course, how do you find a future? How do you look to the future and see positivity, opportunity, hope? And are you there yet, or do you ever get there, or what's that?
I don't know if you ever get there. You learn to live grief. You learn to live around that grief. You learn to, nothing comes on its own anymore. So if I feel joy for my son's achievements, I'm also sad. Veronique's not.
Veronique doesn't get to see it.
And we miss her in that moment. If there's, my son and I, Craig's son, we travelled overseas. As soon as, my son was invited to train at a soccer academy in the UK, and I felt very alone, even though, my son, it was for my son, and I knew that would be good for him mentally. I felt very alone and because Veronique wasn't there. The last holiday we had together, she was part of that, and there was an emptiness. So as much as I was happy that my son was invited and he was, playing in soccer, I was sad that Veronique, she's not there. And so everything you do, it's happy, sad, it's not on its own. You can't, you take a photo, You go to a funeral and you see somebody, a girl accompanying her mum, and you feel, where's my Veronique? Like, you go into the shops and everywhere you go, you're triggered. It's very hard to go, wow, like this is, it's a every minute reminder.
Of course, there's the milestones, there's the birthdays, the Christmases, but also the school and the graduation, the formals, the weddings, the all those sorts of all those things.
Everything.
Yeah.
I go to my girlfriend's daughter's weddings and I think, well, I'm not going to experience this. I get invited to the school stuff, and I go out and give a Bridget Sakr award for social justice, and I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm standing here doing this. I invite every year for her birthday, I invite all her school friends, and they come to the cafe and we cut a cake and we honour Veronique, but she's not there. Like, it's a very...
It's an emptiness.
Yeah. The fullness is not complete. It never will be, but I'm doing my best to honour her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the cafe. Can we just talk about Quattro Cafe for a second?
Yeah. So, look, during COVID, my husband, you'd go for walks, and Craig said, look, I've seen a bunch of empty shops in a residential area. What do you think if we opened up a cafe and we can honour the children? And the community was so supportive during that time. Maybe we can give back. We can make, we met someone who used to own cafes, and he'd retired, and we met him. He reached out to me actually on Facebook to say, hey, look, I've been reading your story, and I'd love to come and meet with you and get to know you. Maybe we can say a few prayers together. So we got to know him, and my husband goes, maybe he can run the cafe, or we can bring him into business with us. And I said, we know nothing about cafes, Craig. We just know how to drink coffee. And he said, look, what have we got to lose? Let's ask him. So he was in retirement, and he said, look, I will do it. I'll run it. I'll come into business with you. And as long as we honour, Veronique and all the loved ones, and give back. We couldn't work out exactly how that would look when we started. Sure enough, we created a beautiful wall. It's a cork wall called Love Lives On. People come in with a photo of their loved one. We've got a Polaroid camera. We take a photo of you and your loved one, and you get to pin it on that wall. And people loved the fact that it had a purpose. Cafe had a purpose. And we made our food with love and for love. And so we said, look, we need to give back to the community. Why don't we give back to the school community who was so supportive? Veronique School, it's an independent Catholic school. School fees, are not necessarily affordable by many people. Why don't we create a scholarship? And they went and sourced a part of their process is to source an applicant, a successful applicant. They found a young girl, beautiful girl, who happened to go to my old school, Diana, and she started this year, year 10.
Wow. And
Veronique would have been year 10. So she will carry the flag with Veronique, proceed for cafe, pay for her school fees, and she will finish with Veronique. And it's continuing that bond. The cafe draws in a lot of people who've lost a loved one, and then we give back by paying the school fees. Yeah, we feel that helps us.
Yeah. I read a lot about the cafe in preparation for today, and it seems like the cafe has become a meeting place for people to share, to connect, to grieve, to honour loved ones, as you say. And I wanted to ask you about the feedback that people are giving you around the cafe, so that we can just get a sense of what are the conversations that are happening over the tables as people are drinking their coffee.
Oh, look, they drink the coffee, they buy a meal. We've named a few meals after customers that come in to the cafe. They go, look, what about this? So we put it on the menu. They find a place where they can gather. They look at the wall. We've got about maybe 200 photos on the wall now. And they find it a place where they say it's got a warm feeling. It's comforting. It's a place where people, can come in and not feel like it's a taboo subject when you talk about someone you've lost. Some people don't know some people don't know how to approach someone who's lost a loved one. And this place breaks down that barrier. This is a place where you come in and talk about your loved one. You come in and honour your loved one. You have the Hall of Fame in many places. Well, this is the wall of fame, the wall of the loved ones. And people are coming back. The council, Stratford Council, has seen what it's done. It's brought the community back to life in that area. So we've sort of approached them about trying to extend on the road. So they approved for us to have some decking, take a couple of car spots. They've made the roads more safer to come into the cafe. They've made a car parking space because car parking was becoming quite hard to find. So they really, really worked with us to build that community. And they know what it's doing to the area. It's a beautiful place. And it's called Quatre, four in French, after the 4 children.
Clearly you have a faith, you've got a church community. Veronique had school communities, obviously Michael too.
Yeah.
But the broader community is what I'm referring to here. And it feels to me, and I'm probably getting into a little bit of social commentary for a moment, and again, I might be wrong. But it feels to me that in a way that the more technologically advanced we become, the more disconnected we become. Connected in one way, digitally, but disconnected emotionally. And some of those, I don't want to call them old-fashioned because they seem old-fashioned in a sense, but I'm just going to call them human traits of gathering and talking and connecting, those very human traits. Tell me what your perspective is on that. And again, with the cafe, it seems to be that meeting that need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw COVID and what it did, right, when you were isolated. We saw mental health on the rise. I think suicide was on the rise. I mean, there was the impact of isolation. Even when you see older people who are lonely, don't have family, their longevity of life is a lot shorter. The interaction and the connection with the broader community, they really appreciate that they can come to a place and have a gathering. That they love that. It's a way where you're not. I mean, talking through the screen is one thing, but you can't really build a culture even in any organisation. I know I led large teams when I was in the insurance game, banking and finance, insurance. The only way to build culture is in a physical presence. You can't. I honestly can't believe you can do it through a screen. You can see each other, you can meet at that time, but where all the sort of the discussions happen, where all the natural juices flow, if you know what I mean, is when you connect physically. And I think that's really, really important for any business, for any community that wants to thrive. You need to have that physical presence. It's a different dynamic to looking at the screen at this hour and walking away. Even the touch and feel, giving someone a hug. If you just kind of go like that, that's soothing. We've had a family who came in a couple of weeks ago, which I connected with them. They lost 3 children as well in a plane crash, the light plane crash with the grandfather. They were flying from Canberra to Armidale, school holidays. And they came in and they wanted to put a photo of their children up on this wall. People want to show that they want to honour their loved one, and it's just, I just feel that the physical component and a smile and hello and how you going, not just talk about that subject that I'm on this Zoom call for, this Teams call for. It really gives another dynamic, another layer, and a depth.
I think you're right. I think that human connection piece is so important. I do really believe that. And just to kind of speak to our audience for a second directly, is that the role that we play in that healthcare environment can't be underestimated either. To see people, to really see people, to really notice them, to care, to genuinely care, to touch, right. All those things are so important from a human experience. I want to ask a little bit about Heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I know Heartfelt you began Heartfelt 6 months after Veronique passed away.
Yeah.
And a lot of your work, I believe, is helping people deal with the grief. So I'm wondering if we can just talk a bit about Heartfelt, the work that it does and how it helps people.
Yeah, so Heartfelt, so Grief Care, which is part of Catholic Cemeteries and Crematoria, they came to us, both our family and the Abdullah family, when the children passed away. I went to the cemetery to look at where Veronique was going to be laid, and a lady called Patricia Thomas was waiting for me. And she said, "We're from Grief Care. We accompany you all through the journey to the funeral and after." And up until that point, up until the funeral, everyone's around you and buzzing. And then, there are others who continue to support you. We had food dropped off to our door for at least a year. But everyone goes back to their normal life. And you're left there hanging, hoping that you can get out of bed and get through another day. And I decided that in order for, as time went on, and Patricia from Grief Care said, "Bridget, you would be," and my strength is people. Like I love people. I connect with people. My success and in my banking career and finance has been building teams and growing businesses because I get to know people. I've always done things with a passion and a purpose, and I thought, rather than just work with people on this technical side of the finance world, why don't I try and capture those who have wounded hearts, and we come together as a community and we share and we talk. So I started an online platform. It was COVID, where we'd get together every fortnight. Actually, we started weekly. It's fortnightly now, but I break open scripture, and we then talk about what we're going through, what we're feeling. We've got breakout rooms. We have a video. We have a song. It's meditative. It's spiritual. It makes meaning finding in your grief journey, and people get to talk about their loved one. And we bring people of heartfelt from heartfelt into the cafe. The cafe is a place for them to come in, and it's building communities where people are struggling to talk about it and make them feel like it's a safe space. There is no judgment. There's no advice. We're not a counselling service. I'm not a grief counsellor. I have the lived experience of grief, but it's about uniting everyone together and sharing stories. And, a lot of relationships have been formed. People catch up from the community. We've got over 200 people now in the community.
Wow.
It is online, and it's people dial in from all over Australia, but we do have gatherings at the cafe where we have, we could have a candlelight night, bring a photo of your loved one. We'll get together and sit around the table and talk about our loved ones.
Do you think, Bridget, that grief is something that we deal with well? Do you think that how do you get prepared for grief? I mean, I've lost relatives, I've lost friends, and I don't think anyone ever taught me how to deal with grief, to be honest. I don't know that anyone knows how to teach you how to deal with grief, to be fair. But
no, I don't think you can ever be prepared, especially traumatic grief.
Yeah. So
I dropped Veronique off. I was going to pick her up, but I never got to pick her up. I mean, that's another layer of grief that's very untapped in terms of the mental impacts that it has on you, on your physical, mental, emotional being. So you're never prepared for grief, even if your loved one's dying of a terminal illness. You're never prepared, really. You try and learn to kind of cope with it. But I think having that support network around you is critical, whether that's your community, that could be church, school, sports, whatever that may be. You could be part of a gym community. You need that. You need your psychologists, your professional people. They're really, really critical as well. Even your faith is, for me, that community. You need to build communities around you. I think, if you I find that people who are closed in about their pain and suffering, I think it has a lot of mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, suicide, domestic violence, drugs. So I think the cultures where people grieve in community I think are a lot healthier. And Patricia Thomas said to me that you grieve alone, but you heal together. So the idea of heartfelt and dealing with grief, the best way possible is in community. And if you can create that culture, and that's what Heartfelt's about, breaking down those silos and creating that community, I think is what helps.
And if anyone listening to this wants to find out about Heartfelt, how would they find out about Heartfelt?
Yeah, just go online, heartfelt.community. It comes up. We're a charity as well. We're a registered charity with DGR status, meaning that any donation over $2 is tax deductible, because I'm hoping to build a pastoral support team that can go out and find those people who are grieving alone and let them know there is a community they can be part of. Yeah, that's where you can find us. And, our website, I've been working on the website to try and make it more interactive. The fortnightly sessions that we have, we post them online. The only things that we don't post is the breakout rooms where there's conversations that have that are personal. Of course. But everything else is there. There's a reflection. There's some beautiful music. It's a way where, we connect. But it's both online, and then the cafe is the physical human connection.
Bridget, just as we, I guess, kind of come full circle with this around thinking about how this conversation started 1st of February 2020, terrible events, Veronique and her cousins being killed. What do you think Veronique would be saying to you now if she saw the work that you're doing?
I think she'd be very proud. She was a people person, so she'd be saying, Mum, she would see people, homeless people, in the streets and want to give them her coins. So she would be very happy that I'm the cafe is all her. She loves food, so she'd be happy that people are eating and being fed.
Any of her favourite dishes on the menu?
Yeah, we've got it caters. I mean, she loved cooking Lebanese food. She was a very young girl, but to do stuffed zucchini and make tabbouleh but she, sausages and potatoes and meat. We've got all that sort of stuff on the menu. So we try and put what she loves. She had such a mature palate, but she would want me to make sure that people are okay. That people out there are okay. And this is how I think about it. If Veronique was traveling and say she was living abroad overseas, and every time I ring her, I'm crying and I want you home and don't cry, and she'd say, Mum, don't cry. She would feel me a burden calling all the time, being upset that she's not around. So I try very hard to do things that I know that she would be very proud of. And that's what I think she'd say.
I think it's also something to be proud of for yourself. And obviously, having that courage to move through that, to find some good that can come of just such an awful tragedy, I think takes incredible reserves of courage and support and patience with yourself, patience with others. The word resilience gets used a lot, but anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't. Like I said, it doesn't come on its own. It's always got that pain and suffering attachment, but with it you create that goodness.
Thank you for telling us about Veronique. She sounds amazing.
She was. She is. She still is. She still is.
Thank you for taking the time to open yourself up to us and to share a bit of your grief with us, so that perhaps the load is a bit lighter for others. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And, I think sharing stories are very powerful. And if my story can help someone else out there, or someone feels they can benefit from some of the things that, I've tried to do, or my husband's tried to do, or our families have tried to do, then that's what life's about people and connections. You take nothing with you other than your memories and your soul.
What's the expression? You come into the world naked and you leave naked.
That's exactly right.
So
there's no hierarchy.
No, there is not. And so we've got to make the best of our life while we have it.
Absolutely.
Bridget, once again, I'm really appreciative, very grateful, very touched. Thank you so much.
Thank you for making time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.